The new Wind of Arrakis premium tank has been in the game for a little while, and we've tested this thing out to see whether or not it actually works in the game, and we're going to see whether or not this thing is as futuristic as it looks, and whether or not that futurism, or whatever you want to call it, is essentially transferable, and whether it actually plays alright in the game. So let's have a quick look at how we set up the tank when we were playing it. We have advanced optics for improved view range so we can spot people easier. We've got advanced loader so we can have improved damage per minute, and then we ran it with traction system for improved speed. Now, one thing that I would do is actually swap out traction system and put on the gun stabilizer. That is just so that when you are using the boost mechanic within the game, which it has a boost and also a kind of accuracy mode, so it has similar to the CS63, so when you're moving quickly you have terrible accuracy, and when you're kind of stationary your accuracy is much better. As you can see in the way that we've got it set up without vertical stabilizer, we've got 0.27 meters accuracy at 100 meters, which is pretty good. It shouldn't really be missing. However, because of the siege mode mechanic, when you do start moving, the dispersion becomes ridiculous, meaning that you basically are super inaccurate with this tank. And so yes, that was a bit of an oversight on my part when we were playing, and I would definitely run gun stabilizer with this thing. Of course, this is part of the June crossover event that Wargaming are kind of doing on World of Tanks console, which I think is a good thing. I think it's pretty decent. I like that they're trying new things, testing out new things, and I actually think that they got this tank quite well balanced, which is something that we don't usually say, and it's actually the case for a few of the recent tanks that they've been introducing into the game. But the Wind of Arrakis is one of those vehicles that I think works quite well. It definitely doesn't get up to its top speed limit of 60 kilometers an hour very often. Even when you're in the boost mode mechanic, you don't have to do anything special with the boost mode. It is like the Swedish kind of medium tanks, whereby once you go over to a certain speed, you'll get the increased speed mechanic, and then when you go slower, you'll then end up in the better accuracy mode. So you can kind of switch between the modes only by kind of moving. You don't have to swap and take time to actually move between the modes. Now, one thing that is good about this tank is it gets 9 degrees of gun depression, which is actually very, very good because it gets a hydro pneumatic suspension, whereby, you know, you can raise up the back of your tank so that you can lower the front of it and therefore get more gun depression, which is ideal because when you already have a decent gun depression on this thing, it makes it very, very usable on a lot of the hills. Its armor model is also quite okay when it comes to its turret armor. There are not really too many key terrible points on it, although with increased penetration of a lot of the tier 9s and tier 10s that you'll face, we'll be able to go through the front of the turret, as you can see on the left and the right hand cheeks right here. So just be aware of that. If you're looking at this thing, you can probably pen it through the side of the turret, even from kind of this sort of angle here. So you basically have to keep your turret exactly in the center, and as soon as you turn just slightly, people will pen you straight through the turret. So be aware of that if you're coming up against it, so that you can take it out super easily. Now, not only that, it does get some pretty shocking hull armor. You can see here it has a big lower plate and kind of upper lower plate as well, which you can see highlighted in orange here. That's the upper lower plate, if that makes sense. And then, or that's what I'm calling it. And then you get this 120 millimeters behind that, which is this, or lower to down, so the lower plate, which you can pen. And then even lower down beneath that, you actually see the bottom of the tank. You do have a super lower plate, if that makes sense. So if you're coming over the top of the hill, you're basically going to get penned in your lower plates. Upper plate wise, it's pretty strong because it's at a stupid angle, so people will just bounce straight off of this because of the ricochet. However, what you'll find is as soon as people get above you, it's paper, so everyone will go through this if they get any level of depression down onto this plate, if they're looking down onto it. If you're face hugging someone, they can look down into the upper plate, which is very thin, 70 millimeters, and will probably be effective of about 100 when you're looking at a reasonable angle onto the top of this tank. So With that being said, side armor is garbage, so you will get penned almost every single time in the side by almost every single tank in the game, including tier 6s will pen you in the side, so be aware this has no side armor. You really have to keep that frontal armor towards your opponents and use ridgelines to avoid them being able to see your hull armor. But with that all being said, the view range of this tank is actually very, very good. 500 meters basically, in the way that we got it set up. Now the commander perks or skills that we've got set up, as you can see on screen, we've got Born Leader, Silent Driving, Camo, Expertise, Situational Awareness, Green Thumb, Muffled Shot, Sixth Sense, Steady Aim and Rapid Loading. Please be aware that all of these perks are not in the order that you would necessarily get them. This is just because I already knew what perks I was getting when I was putting my crew together, because we respect it. So don't go picking Silent Driving as your second perk. You'd want 100% first skill, Sixth Sense, then go with Born Leader, then I would go with Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, and then all of the camo perks to go alongside the view range perks, and then Silent Driving. But either way, that's kind of how we set up this tank. 230mm of penetration with this vehicle, 400 alpha damage is really, really good. And the steel concealment's actually okay when you've got all of those perks on. 322, meaning that you can get a decent amount of spotting in your games, even in those tier 10 games. So with that being said, that's kind of how the tank will play, and yeah, it is a bit sluggish in the game. It doesn't get any extra bonuses when it comes to silver, other than your standard premium bonus that you will get of 50% extra silver in every game that you play. Other than that, let's jump in to the gameplay portion to see exactly how this plays and how you, if you're not interested in picking it up from the store, which is available right here, right now for 10,000 gold, let's see how much it's actually worth getting by the gameplay style of it. Now then, the first game that we do have is on Prokhorovka, and I think that this is a decent showcase of what the tank can do. Don't know whether we'll showcase a second gameplay, as this basically sums up everything that you kind of need to know. Now, this game is not ideal. We are in a match full of tank destroyers which can pen us even with our good strong frontal armour, and they're all tier 10, things like the Turan, the FE 4005, the Waffle 100. We've got all of those in the game, albeit there is a little Falcon over there. Now you can see here that shot on the Falcon T92. It was actually a really weird one, because we are using the we were kind of going fast and then slow, and then you end up with the difference between the siege mode and the movement mode, and you can often end up missing shots, so you have to get accustomed to that. It's been a long time since I've played with any of the Swedish mediums properly, so I was definitely not accustomed to it, and you can often miss shots. But don't take that as a negative of the tank. Once you get to know how to use it, it's absolutely fine, and I found that a lot of people discredit these sorts of vehicles with the siege mode mechanic, and as if it's clunky, but yes, it is kind of, but you actually get used to it and you'll be able to use it quite easily once you get used to it. So that's kind of how that kind of siege mode mechanic can mess you up. You just saw that our LTTB there just got hit by, of course, our favourite tank destroyer in the game, the Turan, the tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer. Unfortunately, no one seems to have gone onto the hill, or at least pushed to the hill at this moment in time, which means that we have the potential to get hit in the side if we do get spotted here. And you can see me looking over towards the hill now. Find ourselves a little Waffle 100 who takes one for the team, and we back all the way down the hill, because not only is the Waffle up on the hill, but the FE 4005. Bit of a weird position for those two to actually go up the hill, but I guess they are in the same platoon and decided that it was a good idea to do so. Now you can see here the accuracy is letting us down, because of course when we're moving it causes the dispersion like we talked about. And so if you continuously do that, which you will find in this vehicle, that you will miss shots. And even though the accuracy says it's good, it really isn't that good, and that's why we would always recommend taking vertical stabilizers in this thing as opposed to the speed boost equipment, because it really doesn't make that much of a difference anyway. But you can see, just trying to get a shot on the Barask, unfortunately he was down in the bowl on this map, which is in E3, which is kind of a crucial position if a medium tank with decent view range can get into it. You can see here we're getting a little bit confident trying to just poke this Tiger 2, but we don't want to shoot before we're actually fully aimed. And so we're just waiting now to see what actually develops and what we can find in this game. However, you're going to see the sorts of things that Prokhorovka can throw at you. The enemy team have kind of made their way all the way onto the kind of western side of the map, so we need to be really careful. We put one into the Turan because it's super dangerous, and our best friend in the FE3805 artillery takes him out in the game, which is a feels good for sure. But there's a T110E3 who we're going to try and get one into the side on, and we actually do. Now the reason I'm pushing over the tracks here is so that we don't get crunched as soon as the enemy team take out our team who are camping at the base. There's a Iron Rain out in the open who appears like he's going to get pumped in a second, and the FE4005 removes him. But now we've got into a nice position to try and get one onto the Waffly 100, and we can just keep pushing to try and get this guy out of the game. Hopefully we can get one more into him before this game ends. Aim time of this tank, you can see there, is quite slow, especially when you've just moved from the movement mode. You can see we're currently in that movement mode. You can tell on the kind of top right of our kind of vehicle icon that we've got the 2 arrows upwards. Tells you that you're in the movement mode or the rapid mode or whatever wargaming you want to call it, essentially your fast mode. And then when you go into a slower kind of speed, I think it's something like 15 kilometers an hour, you can actually find that you'll be much more accurate. And you can see us just moving up now. And this is really where you have to push opponents in the late game when you've not done a huge amount of damage, and if you want to boost up your spotting, because if you're going for marks of excellence or whatever, you do need to push forward and try and get a bit of spotting damage to boost up those marks, since it's way easier to get a spotting than it is to get actual damage. You can see here we're trying to lead the shot to try and track this guy. It doesn't go entirely well, and we would have been better off loading a heat round there, as we probably would have penned him in the front plate anyway, because he was angled down. But unfortunately wasn't using the heat rounds until now. But having done 2,000 damage and got 248 assistance, we can push towards this artillery piece and hopefully spot some of these guys later on. We find ourselves a GW Tiger, and we're going to try and use the kind of movement mode to get up here, and then use the siege mode to actually aim and use the gun depression. We find ourselves a nice little charioteer who's out in the open, but unfortunately for us, he's removed very quickly by the Object 268. But there's still a little bit more that we can do in this game. We want to try and find out where the Jag Tiger is, as well as where that E5 has disappeared off to, and the medium tank, which is the Barask, who appears to have kind of YOLO'd our tank destroyer over in the right, but unfortunately for him it was a Foch who removes him very quickly. The small pesky French tank got removed by a much larger annoying French tank. So either way, pushing up now. We don't fully aim this one because he's probably going to get removed before we can actually fully aim anyway, so might as well fire. The E5 goes for us, so we pull down the ridge just to get a little bit more hidden. We're happy to take a hit here, it's fine. We actually bounce off of the E5's lower plate, which kind of sucks. We get a weird kind of animation on the tank, which is Wargaming's kind of animations that they actually feature. And there we go, we shut down the E5 and get spotting for both of those guys that we did spot earlier. 4 enemies taken out as well. Victory, of course, coming top of the team with 3,060 damage and 1,683 base experience. The Wind of Arrakis. Definitely one of the more well-balanced vehicles in the game, and I really did enjoy playing this one. I think that Wargaming got it quite right, and of course, even if it is futuristic looking, it very much merges with a lot of other vehicles at this tier. So is it one that you have to get because it's overpowered? Absolutely not. But if you are interested in playing and using tanks that have that hydropneumatic suspension and the ability to swap between siege mode and speed mode, I think this is a good option, unless of course you want to go for the free versions, which are the Swedish medium tanks, which I highly recommend trying out anyway and giving those a go, as they're some of my favourite medium tanks in the game, and I don't think they get enough credit than what they deserve. So with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like the video if you did, and of course subscribe if you want to see some more content from me and you aren't already. For all of you subscribers that are actually here, thank you very, very much, and I will see you in the next one coming soon. Goodbye.